notification from Twitter to start the podcast. Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever you want. Hello, welcome to the Forza Italian Football Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Clancy. I'm joined 20 minutes late by Kev Pogjalski. Kev, hello.
Hi, Connor.
And also joining us is the less sassy Vito Doria. Vito, thanks for being a pleasant colleague.
No worries, Connor. Always enjoy doing the pod with you guys, and once again, got the mug.
Yeah, I've got mine here too as well, to be fair. Kev, where's yours?
You send it over with my Atalanta
Right.
magnet.
Do you wanna cut this attitude? Because we're not even a minute in and you're already dishing it out. Do you wanna just stop this?
Okay, sorry,
I don't
boss.
know. I don't know where this has come from. You
Alright.
were 20 minutes late. What's your problem?
Start the pod.
No comment.
Right. For those of you who are listening, you probably don't care, but Kev sent a message in our mutual group saying, I'm ready. 15 minutes before we were due to start recording. So me and Vito came on to start recording, and 20 minutes later, 5 minutes after we're due to start recording, still no sign of Kev. Here he comes. Any defense?
I never got the invite.
Oh, right, of course he didn't. Vito got it, strangely enough. But anyway, let's
I just
stop
went straight to Skype.
Yeah, like a normal, rational person would. Let's stop the bickering, get the Serie A. Normal service has very much resumed. Juve won, Inter didn't. There's a 4-point lead at the top. Kev, title race is done.
Well, if you're discounting Lazio, who have now got a game in hand over Inter, but yeah, my prediction of an Inter Scudetto is nose diving pretty quickly. And I wrote last week about Christian Eriksen could perk them up a little if they could get that deal over the line before the end of the transfer window, and instead they go and sign Ashley Young, so there's no hope for them.
But yeah, we'll get on to Inter's transfer business, but let's start with Juve Parma, because Juventus went 1-0 up. Cristiano Ronaldo scored. Andreas Cornelius scored what was, to give him credit, a very good header for Parma to level. And Juve did what Juve do, Vito. They scored immediately, retook the lead, and didn't really look troubled after that.
No, not particularly. There were probably times where you think Juventus were rather wasteful in possession. But that being said, Parma didn't look like they were really the dangerous cells on the counter-attack. Gervinho not being available didn't help their cause. And Dejan Kulusevski, ever since he has signed with Juventus, I don't think he has replicated the same performances that he did in the first half of the season. So on this performance, that wasn't good for him. But at least if we focus on him personally, hopefully he can still turn around and show why people have been making a big fuss over him for the first 6 months.
Yeah, well, I guess in the Lecce game last Monday evening, he started very, very poorly. But after about 25 minutes, he grew into things a little bit more. And then in the second half, I actually thought he was excellent, back to his usual early season self. But he didn't do it. But I guess he's a 19-year-old kid. Sometimes you're going to come unstuck against the 1,000th time Serie A champions. But Kev, it's looking like it's just going to be another one of those years, right? Because we've seen in recent seasons under Spalletti and Mancini, Inter be crowned winter champions only to collapse in the second half of the season. This time they didn't even get that accolade. Juve are the winter champions, and I mean they're well placed. They don't usually surrender leads.
No, there was a air of inevitability about the game really. Once they even went ahead. Ronaldo, after all his problems at the start of the season, where we're led to believe they weren't particularly managing his knee injury very well, seems to be sort of hitting top form. There's like moments when they were 2-1 up at the end, and Ronaldo, rightly or wrongly, didn't square the ball for Higuain and went straight for goal, and that can come back and bite you sometimes, but it just doesn't seem to happen to Juve. And Sarri would probably be quite pleased with his first year in Turin. But you do wonder if they can get over the line in Europe, and whether the season will still be seen as a little bit of a disappointment if that doesn't happen. But domestically, it looks like they're gonna not run away with it, but dominate again.
Do you know what? It's an interesting point you raised, because last season, it was last year when they lost in the first leg against Atletico Madrid, and I remember I was one of the people who was quite vocal in thinking that if they don't win the Champions League, the season's something of a failure, because Serie A is a certainty. This year, for the first time in maybe 4-5 years, longer, Serie A hasn't seemed a certainty, because Inter have strengthened the way they did. There's all that change at Juve with Sarri coming in instead of Allegri. And Serie A wasn't so much a guarantee this year. It still isn't a guarantee, but if they win Serie A and come up short in Europe, Vito, this year, do you think it's as much of a disappointment as it was last season?
I don't think so, and that's predominantly because this is only Sarri's first season with the squad. I'm still not convinced that this is truly his squad, and this is more or less the legacy, if you like, of the Max Allegri era. I think they're more or less Allegri's players, and the players that are more suited to his conservative methods. And there are moments where we do see Sarri's football come to fruition. We probably saw it more midweek in the Coppa Italia when Juve won 4-0, and that first goal Higuain scored, which was absolutely superb with the exchange of passes. But in Serie A, I don't think we've seen such passing movements and that sort of technical brilliance as yet.
It's been coming on a little bit, though, week by week, right? And by March, do you think they'll be even another step closer to what Sarri wants them to do?
I won't say a guaranteed yes, but I'd like to hope so. Around March is usually that time of the year where the big boys, they really step it up a gear and they really mean business, whereas the smaller sides, if you like, or weaker sides, they tend to drop off after having a good run early on in the season. So Juve have that squad to last the duration of the season, and even if they have off days, they still got the players to sort of change things up.
This is the thing, Kev, right? We touched briefly on into transfers. We'll get into it in a second, but Juve don't need to do all that much in January because they've got a Scudetto winning squad already assembled.
Oh, absolutely. Their squad's huge, and that was something that people wondered if Sarri would struggle with that a little, because he never really changed his sides once he found a winning formula. And they've been relatively lucky with injuries, other than Chiellini, that almost would have helped him if some players had been out of the side for longer periods this season. I do just wonder how stale some of those squad players will get if, when they're looking to maybe go further in the Champions League, he goes back into his usual routine of playing a set side, which might well help them in the long run, until you then have an injury and somebody has to come into the side and not quite click within his system.
Yeah, well, credit to Cristiano Ronaldo as well. Actually, he's on 16 Serie A goals for the season now, which Ciro Immobile is making look average, but 16 goals from 20 games, it's not too bad. The reason they are now 4 points clear is because Inter went all the way down to Italy's southernmost city in Puglia. They played Lecce and they drew 1 each. And Vito, this is just one of those results that you cannot afford if you want to be not only winning a title, but winning a title when Juventus are the opposition.
Absolutely not. Romelu Lukaku was perhaps unfortunate to get a goal disallowed in the first half, but I think if you look at the overall performance, it didn't look like that the Nerazzurri were really worthy of earning 3 points. Not only that, although Lecce, they've just been promoted from Serie B, they have managed to get some impressive results at home themselves this season, especially against bigger sides. So Inter, although I think that this is clearly 2 points lost for them, this current Lecce side, they somehow step it up a level against the bigger teams. So at the same time, I don't think it's it's that much of a disaster, so to speak. It's bad to draw against Lecce, but Lecce, I think, in some way should be given a little bit of credit for how they've handled the big teams instead of being blown out of the water on their home soil.
Yeah, Kev, Ashley Young is in at Inter for the left wing back role, where Cristiano Baraghi has disappointed this year. Victor Moses is set to come in for right wing back. Olivier Giroud might come in. Christian Eriksen might come in. Are these the signings that are gonna get Inter over the line?
Well, Christian Eriksen would be a fantastic addition. The others, I just wonder if they have the same agent as Antonio Conte. Ashley Young strikes me a little bit like when Ashley Cole went. I applaud people for sort of moving out of their comfort zone, particularly British players, which don't tend to move abroad. But you just wonder at 34 whether he's doing that slightly too late. Somebody on social media compared the move with Smalling going and sort of trying his luck at Roma. But although they were both out of favour at Manchester United, Smalling could potentially build a sort of 5, if not more year legacy in Italy if he wants to remain. Ashley Young just strikes a bit of desperation, even if you're only paying 1.5 million euros.
He did play, 40-something games in 2019. So he might be 34, but he seems to still have it in him.
Well, yeah, I think in this day and age, physically, lots of players still do. I think surely fans want to see more of a long-term. Antonio Conte coming in must have looked for Inter fans like a long-term project. So although Baraghi's been disappointing, I think if I was an Inter supporter, I would probably prefer for that to be persisted with, rather than go down a short-term option, because they were not. If they'd been finishing, if it wasn't working with some of the players and they were languishing in 5th or 6th position, but there are a couple of places off Inter who have dropped very, very few points over the last couple of seasons. So they're not doing that badly. And if you're going to bring something in January, why not somebody like Eriksen? Why not somebody that's got that creativity, that technical ability to spark some life in the rest of the team? Whereas, with the greatest respect, Ashley Young and Victor Moses and Olivier Giroud, although Giroud could, if he sort of went on a little bit of a scoring spree, would maybe spark that life into the other players.
Right. But this is the thing. Giroud's not going to play. He's going to come in to be backup to Lukaku. Even in terms of the hierarchy of strikers, he's probably going to be 4th choice behind Alexis Sanchez as well. And level on with Esposito. It'd probably be a little bit ahead of him in the pecking order, but he's not going to play.
Absolutely. To get the Eriksen deal over the line. According to reports, they're grumbling over now about 5-6 million euros.
Yeah. When there's Scudetto on the line, you think, just pay it, right? And
yeah.
I think Victor Moses is actually quite a shrewd addition. I know he's been out on loan with Fenerbahce this season. It looks like, I think he might actually be in Milan now to complete his medical and sign everything. So by the time people listen to this, he might be posing with a shirt. But I think he can do a job for them. But yeah,
he's probably younger than I think he is, because he's been around for so long.
I think he's older than I think he is. So What age do you think he is? I reckon he's probably 28.
Yeah, I was thinking 28, 29.
Okay. Moses.
He started at Crystal Palace very, very young.
Yeah, he's 29 years old, so good shout. He's done well. But he could still have a few years in him as well. He could do quite well for a while there, especially. We've seen him do it under Conte before, so he knows what he's getting into, and Conte knows what he's getting with him.
That's the one positive for that transfer, because Moses' career has almost been up and down, where he hasn't sort of fitted or been favoured by the coach that he's had, and that very much was what changed for him at Chelsea when Conte went there.
I think they
can work together.
Very much 3 kind of segments to Moses' career. It's pre-Conte, with Conte, and post-Conte, and only one of those has been successful, and that was with him at Chelsea. Vito, talking about the Christian Eriksen thing, is it something. Do Inter just need to go and stop messing about, put the money on the table, sign Christian Eriksen, and win the Scudetto?
If they're that serious about the Scudetto, I think so, because he's probably one of the few technical players that could really offer something different to Inter's play. I don't see him as a Conte type player, but I think Conte needs to be a bit realistic and also not be so stubborn and try and incorporate someone with Eriksen's talents, because he can, provide a bit of X factor and a bit of unpredictability with his play. I think another thing too is that I just reckon it's Inter just looking at the economics far too much, because he's got less than 6 months left on his contract. They could get him on a free transfer for 2020, 2021. But when you think that way, you're kind of saying that they're going to run off the Scudetto already and they're going to plan for next season. But at this stage, even though it's now a 4-point margin, I still think mathematically there is a hope of winning the title. And getting Eriksen there, I reckon, would make a lot of difference to the chances.
I think there's murmurs in the UK that Eriksen might not be backing out of the deal, but obviously questioning the move. 6 months ago, maybe even 18 months ago, he was looking potentially or hopeful, I think, for a move to one of the big Spanish clubs. So surely if Inter wait around, they're going to have more competition from other clubs with Eriksen being a free agent. Whereas if you just put the 20 million euros down on the table, sign him, 4-year contract, if he doesn't like it after 6 months, they'll recoup the financial outlay for the player, and then he can maybe go somewhere else where he wants to go.
He did look set for Real Madrid, or at least set on Real Madrid, but it didn't happen, largely because I think Zidane didn't quite want him, but he was kind of holding out for Pogba. But anyway, I do think he's genuinely got that quality, because you see them turn into the bench for the likes of Borja Valero, and Valero is a class act, right? And he's got a lot of skills to his game, but he's not going to carve out chances and drive a team on to a title. And then beyond Brozovic, Sensi and Barella in midfield, there's not all that much there to get excited about. Looking at the bench they had at the weekend, it's quite grim reading if you're an Inter fan or someone hoping for a change of guard at the top of Serie A, but it is what it is at the moment. Anyway, that'll do on Inter. I'm going to go speak to Alistair McKenzie now about Lazio 5, Sampdoria 1. Vito, you're being spared. If you are only listening to this or watching this on YouTube, you're going to have to stop, go download the audio version of the podcast and hear me speak to Alistair about that, because we're going to continue on this, and you're not going to hear us talk about probably the most exciting and best team in Italy at the moment. Anyway, from one of the Roman sides to the other, Roma went away to Genoa and they won 3-1. And it was pretty comprehensive, pretty comfortable, Vito.
Yes, it was. And in some ways, it was probably a tad comical too. Roma obviously needed the win. There were quite a few good performances on the day, such as Spinazzola, Diawara, Pellegrini. And, it goes to show they're still putting in with the fight for Champions League spot. But I say comical, aside from me liking to get stuck into Genoa, you had the second Roma goal, which was an own goal by Davide Biraschi. He just deflected in after a Spinazzola shot. And then Paolo Giglione had a chance to score for Genoa, and he missed from point-blank range. So the score suggests that Roma, deserved the win and all that, and pretty comfortably. But I think, in a way, they probably got a bit of assistance from their opponents.
Yeah, the own goal was pretty hilarious, to be honest. I'd imagine even more so from a Sampdoria perspective. But Kev, Roma, they got a big win not a big win, a comfortable 2-0 win at Parma in the Coppa Italia in midweek as well. They've got another one, 3-1 at Genoa, and they look quite all right. They're just ticking along. I know they had disappointments against Torino at home, but generally speaking, this Roma side are considerably better than the previous edition.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a moment in the game, not that Genoa tested them too much, but Paul Lopez pulled off a wonderful save, and I think with the addition of Smalling, they've got a little bit more about them in defence and in goal. I heard your chuckle than they did last year with Robin Olsen, even though they lost Manolas in the summer. So yeah, I think they are just ticking along nicely, and they're 7 points behind Lazio. So it would take a bit of a collapse at this stage, given how well Lazio played this season, for them to catch them. But it could be one of those occasions where they just sort of sneak up on everyone around them. They've obviously still got Atalanta on their tails, and Cagliari are dropping away. But yeah, at the moment, you'd be quite happy sitting in fourth if you're a Roma fan.
Yeah, but it's split even more now, hasn't it, the Serie A table? Because it's very much the top three. Then Roma, Atalanta look like they're going to fight it out for the last Champions League spot. And then that Europa League, that last Europa League spot is kind of anyone's taking, from Cagliari down to, I don't know, maybe even SPAL at this rate. But it's all gone a bit mad. It's quite nice to have Serie A competitive everywhere. But maybe it'd be nicer if there were a few more teams competing at the top rather than just the handful. But no, Lazio are good. Roma are good. I don't really know what else to say. But that Smalling deal, actually, to lose Manolas, get Smalling in, and to have your team actually improve and look better defensively, that's a great bit of business from the summer. Like a really underrated piece of transfer business. You wonder how they'd be coping if Manolas and Smalling were playing alongside one another. But Kev, I giggled because you just can't resist it, can you? You just have to get Robin Olsen in whenever possible.
Well, I'm not going to say he's part of Cagliari's fall, but he's had a couple of questionable moments. But no, I just think when we're talking about, you're talking about Smalling coming in over the summer, that Paul Lopez deal looks very astute. He looks an extremely good goalkeeper, and you just hope that it doesn't go the way that Alisson went, and they had obviously Szczesny on loan before he went off to Juventus, and that they can keep hold of a goalkeeper for once for a couple of years, and maybe build on that. He's
going to do very well there for the rest of the season, and then Buffon will retire, and Juve will say, hello, Mr. Pau. Do you want to come and win a Scudetto? And he'll go and win a Scudetto. But no, Pau's been good for a couple of years. He was good at Espanyol and then at Real Betis last season as well. So, solid goalkeeper, definite upgrade on your friend. And full steam ahead for Roma. Atalanta in fifth, they lost in what was probably the most predictable result of this weekend. I don't know why people are acting like this is a surprise. I'm pretty sure I called it on the podcast last week. If not, I definitely called it on Twitter, because I could just see this coming a mile away. SPAL, bottom of the league, the team who scored the fewest goals in Serie A this season, went to Bergamo and they left with a 2-1 win. And Andrea Petagna, Italy's best striker, scored again against his old club. Of course he did. And I don't know if you guys saw, but I did some adding up on Petagna, because he's always seems to score against Atalanta since he left. And I dug up this fact, Kev, so let me know what you think about this. In 4 games against Atalanta, Andrea Petagna has scored as many goals, 5, as he did in his most prolific season in Bergamo, which was 5, in 34 games. And he's also scored more than the 4 goals he managed in his last season there in 29 games. Andrea Petagna, what can you say?
I can say he's not Italy's best striker when you
is
Ciro Immobile.
Immobile doesn't count. Petagna is the best Italian striker that's not called Ciro Immobile.
Andrea Bellotti.
How many goals has he got this season?
Oh, there's a test.
He's got more than Petagna, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But no, I stand by it. Petagna's phenomenal. He's a good player in a terrible team.
right up there with Bobby English.
No, he's a lot better than Roberto Inglese will ever dream of being. Sorry, people at Parma, if you're listening, but it's true. Petagna's good. Come on, he's playing in a team that don't create any chances, and he's got 6 goals for himself this season. I mean, it's not bad. That's half of SPAL's goals this term.
Yeah, I suppose so. You wonder why. Obviously, he's got 6 goals in a side that maybe don't create as many as those higher up the table. But maybe he doesn't bring so much to another team, and that's why another higher place side haven't taken a chance on him, or aren't looking at taking a chance on him. You'll see more of the rumour mill over in Italy than I do here in the UK. But he's not a name that I see constantly cropping up with other sides.
No, I know Lazio were kind of sniffing around him in the summer, and I was hoping that he wouldn't go. I'm kind of glad he didn't, because I think he's going to keep SPAL up this season. Been saying all year they're not going to go down. Stand by that. They're only a point off safety now. But yeah, Petagna, when he was at Atalanta, he didn't take the chances he had, and now that he's at SPAL, he's taking chances that aren't there. So he's a strange sort of a player. He can do everything. Just scoring goals is actually the thing I think he's worst at out of anything he does. So he got 16 last season, 6 so far this. He's on track to hit double figures again this term, quite handily. So no, Petagna's a good one. Atalanta, Vito, were a little bit all over the place. They were hit by absences to Hans Hateboer and Timothy Castagna, which kind of made the whole team quite lopsided. Then Mario Pasalic, who apparently his name is pronounced Pasalic. He says it that way. So I'm going to have to try and start saying it like that. But anyway, him, the Croatian midfielder who wears number 88, and Martin Deron had pretty poor games. They couldn't pass the ball straight. And then Papu Gomez came off with more than half an hour left when it was 1-1. And Atalanta just couldn't create anything of note, Vito.
That's what happens when you're missing key players, and it just throws the team out of balance. I don't think Hateboer has been as impressive as he has been in the other seasons he's played, or he hasn't been involved as in the goals as much, but it's still important to have someone like him there. And then, of course, Castagna, he's a versatile player. He's been more involved in the goals than Hateboer, so they're 2 big losses for Ladea, and yeah, the sooner they return, the better off they'll be, because that 3-4-1-2 or variation of it that they use, it seems to be pretty well settled. So to sort of tinker around with it might be a bit problematic. And in this case against SPAL, who we've sometimes joked around as being an Atalanta B team, they managed to get the victory in Bergamo.
They did. Credit to Josip Ilicic, by the way, for his goal. A no-look back heel. Roberto Firmino would have been proud of it. People would be losing their minds if Firmino did this. Wasn't actually that great, but back heels are always nice. And Duban Zapata, back in the team, back involved. He got the assist. He hit the post. He forced a save from Berisha late on. So Zapata seems like he's fully back. Sassuolo played Torino in the game I went to this weekend, just the one. It was a nice relaxing weekend, and Sassuolo came from behind to beat Torino 2-1. Absolute magic from Jeremy Boga as well. Kev, did you see the former Chelsea man's wizardry?
Yeah, absolutely. I did the season preview for Sassuolo, and I tipped him to be their breakthrough player, and I hadn't noticed until I watched the replay that he'd nutmegged Rincon as well before he sort of unleashed that effort. And for a period in that game, it looked like that was the only way that Sassuolo were going to beat Sirigu, because he pulled off a couple of decent saves before that to deny them.
There was a very irate Reggiano man beside me in the press box. I say Reggiano, he's probably from Modena actually, given he was so passionate about Sassuolo. And he just kept appealing things that he had no right to appeal and asking for my opinion, which every single time I disagreed with. And then he would just get more and more angry because I wasn't agreeing with him. And he was going absolutely nuts at me while Boga scored that goal, so he missed it. which made me very, very happy because Morgan did the nutmeg and I kind of went, oh. And then when he took the shot and the way it hit the net was so nice. It kind of just rolled around the net after it flew in. And I did, when you watch football and you see something that good, you do one of those involuntary, that happened to me. And it was quite nice. And it made the trip to Reggio Emilia worthwhile, which takes some doing, let me have you know. But
I don't need to hear that noise come out of your mouth again. Not while I'm looking at your face.
Yeah, you've heard a lot worse come out of my mouth in the past. So I remember those late nights in Turin. Don't you try and pretend otherwise. That's all we're going to say about that game and that experience. So we'll move on to Milan now because, AC Milan, they won another game. They're unstoppable, Vito. They beat Udinese 3-2. What a win.
Look, it'd be easy to push the narrative and say it's just Udinese, but I thought, especially in that second half, I thought it was a very exciting second period, really enjoyable game, and it seemed like both sides put some of the weaknesses aside, at least offensively. I think both sides were really going for the win. Udinese lethal on the counter-attack. Milan were excellent in possession, especially when attacking down the left wing. It seemed that, they had a few skills in the bag, and that's, just Milan. But when Ante Rebic came on at halftime for Giacomo Bonaventura, I think that's when things really changed. In the first half, it looked like Udinese were capable of getting a shock win, but they weren't taking their chances. Whereas in the second half, both teams were at it. Musso in goal for Udinese made some good saves. Donnarumma atoned for his calamitous mistake in the first half and had an excellent start to the second half, especially those first 10 minutes, made some incredible saves. But yeah, it was really end-to-end stuff, and yeah, just pleasing on the eye. And if Milan can continue these kind of performances, they might be able to climb up the table. But at the same time, with how they've been this season, you don't really want to fall into a false sense of security or be given false hope.
Kev, Milan were playing Udinese, and if it weren't for Gianluigi Donnarumma, they would have lost this. So do people need to relax a little bit?
Yeah, they do need to relax a little bit. I kind of... people need to probably remember that Milan have beaten a side by one goal who were only a point... they were only a point ahead of before the game. And they did. They ran the risk. They ran terribly close to first losing the game if Udinese had been more clinical, and then also, losing the 3 points after a terrible bit of defending from Theo Hernandez, who I'm sure wants to laud his very, very good strike, but he left whoever it was who went the other side of him to cross for Lasagna's equaliser, and this is where. Sorry, I've gone off this, but onto Theo Hernandez. It's like he's a YouTube footballer. He's full of lovely clips and winning goals or fantastic strikes, but maybe doesn't do the basics. And why is it Milan at their current level, rather than those that have a tendency to say that he's the best left back in Serie A.
Best left back in Serie A, Kev.
Yeah.
Not if he's not, well, how come he isn't? No, he's not. Robin Gosens is better than him. Timothy Castagna is better than him. Alexandro is better. I don't know where this has actually come from.
Well, it was tongue in cheek. I call him a YouTube footballer, but that's what Milan's done for the last 2 or 3 seasons. They bought players. The fans go instantly to social media to see wonderful clips on them, and then you have to sit through 90 minutes. And if you sit there live, which Milan fans must have struggled with the last few seasons, you see players' failings. A bit like when you were talking up Petagna. You see him much more. Well, I'm not sure if I have seen Petagna live, but those are the sort of players that you appreciate when you're watching them live. And the likes of the YouTube footballers, try not to get this into the dictionary, but you see their failings when you're watching them live, or if you maybe even on TV and you're just watching a little bit more closely than you would be others.
He's played every game since Stefano Pioli took over. The only one he missed was through suspension in Bergamo when Milan lost 5-0 and poor Ricardo Rodriguez had to endure that. Is that coincidence, Vito, or is there something to that?
I reckon there could be something to it, because as poor as Theo Hernandez can be, he is at least very good going forward, and he's now got 5 goals for the season now, and that's the most the defender has scored for Milan for quite some time. And that being said, you'd think he plays more like a left wing back or left winger than a traditional left back. And we're talking about a club that had the legend himself, Paolo Maldini. So you'd think that they would have players that actually know how to defend first and foremost, but can also add something offensively, whereas Theo Hernandez is not that. But, that being said, if we look overall at the game, he had his defensive flaws, but I thought him and Jens Trigger Larsen on the right side, who scored that first goal after Donnarumma's mistake and then provided the cross for Kevin Lasagna to make it 2-2. I thought both guys, they did their part at least in the attacking phase of the game, although defensively, yeah, they were quite poor.
Yeah, well, I think it does say a lot about Theo that Real Madrid are willing to let him go and sign Ferland Mendy instead, who's relatively inexperienced at the top level, and given Marcelo's failings defensively, he was still let to leave and never got played under Zidane at Madrid. So I don't know. I think he's quite a nice player to watch because he does the unpredictable. He can be quite exciting, but yeah, exciting is, as a neutral, is also him making mistakes that allow other teams in on his flank. But is that enough on Milan? No, Ante Rebic, right? Because he struggled this season, Kev, but he came on at half-time, he scored 2, and he played quite well.
Yeah, he did. I've put him in as my player of the week, although he only played half a game. There wasn't a lot else in Serie A this weekend where somebody made that type of contribution that won Milan the game. He was terribly poor when he was at Fiorentina, and I think then sometimes that can sort of stick with you when you come back to a league that you've left. There seems to be an element of the 3 players that Eintracht Frankfurt let go this summer, with Haller, who went to West Ham, and Luka Jovic that went to Madrid, that they worked wonderfully. It just clicked for them within that 3. It all came together. Milan maybe need to have a little bit more confidence in him, and then that maybe instill a little bit of confidence in himself to push on a little bit. There's clearly talent there, and hopefully they can stick with him a little bit.
Fiorentina went down to Naples. Vito, they won 2-0. Another win for them. It's 3 in a week. And Napoli are a disaster. You choose. Do you want to talk about Fiorentina or Napoli?
I'll talk about Fiorentina first. Fiorentina, I think, have been able to turn things around incredibly well since Beppe Iacchini's taken over. Although they still use the 3-5-2 formation that Vincenzo Montella did, the game plan and philosophy has totally changed. They're much more organised at the back. There's much better midfield balance because instead of trying to incorporate Milan Badel and Eric Pulga into the same midfield, Iacchini's just stuck to Pulga in that defensive midfield role with Castrovilli and Benassi beside him. And I think that's made a difference. But when they play on the counter-attack, Fiorentina, they look a lot more dangerous. Instead of playing the old possession game that they were, and they looked very sterile and predictable, here they've got, they were able to stifle Napoli's attacking play. Napoli looked very predictable and couldn't find space. And then the way they braked it was, just quick and direct football. And there were a lot of top performers for Fiorentina, to be honest. I don't think there was a guy that was really looking bad. Just everyone seemed to be one better than the other. And in midfield, like I was saying, I thought Pulgar played a pretty good game with his distribution and all that. And Gaetano Castrovilli showed once again why he's one of Italy's most promising young midfielders. He just looked so confident on the ball, but he covered a lot of ground too. He was like all over the ground. So he's becoming a much more enjoyable player to watch as the season progresses.
He can be. I think he still has that Chiesa thing where he makes bad decisions and he can be a little bit selfish sometimes. And at Fiorentina, I think they get away with that. It'd be interesting to see if that continues under Iachini, but I would hope, because he's clearly got a lot of talent. I would hope that Iachini can kind of beat some sense into him. Kev, Napoli lost again, though. Gattuso said afterwards that the performance was shameful. The players have to apologise to the fans and to the city. They've hit rock bottom. The only way out is by being united and by listening to each other. But they've lost 4 from 5 games, and they haven't done that since 2001-2 under Zenexemen when they ended up getting relegated. It's not likely to happen this season, but how much worse can it get for them?
Well, Fiorentina will jump over them soon. There was when they cut the highlights, there's an interesting picture. Well, I say interesting. That's me trying to sound not horrible, but there was a young boy in the crowd crying after Vlahovic hit the second goal for Fiorentina. But it's an interesting comment from Gattuso over the listening to each other, almost as though some of the players are a little bit disengaged, which I think we thought they were anyway under Ancelotti, and we talked about the group that was probably started to be put together under Rafa Benitez is coming to an almost natural conclusion. But I looked at the league table after the results this weekend, and just because I was quite scathing of Fiorentina at the start of the season, and Napoli were going so well after coming second last year, and they're now on the same amount of points. They've got identical records with 6 wins, 6 draws, and 8 defeats. It just didn't seem possible at the start of the season, and I've seen Napoli twice this year in the Champions League, and they get up for those games, and I don't expect them not to get up for the knockout stages. But if they're not careful and they take their eye off the ball in the league, they're going to be in a position where there's no European football next year, which is looking a tad unlikely at the moment, and probably a bit of a fire sale from some of their talents. How long will Lorenzo Insigne stick around? I know he's a local boy, but he's got to want a little bit more than he's getting at the moment from them.
Yeah, he's got to take some responsibility as well, though, right? Napoli are on 24 points. They've got a 0 goal difference. They've only scored 28 goals this season. And part of that falls on Insigne's shoulders. You said Napoli are now, they're only 6 points off Cagliari in 6th, but they're, 11 off Atalanta in 5th? So Champions League's not happening. Europa League's possible, but they've got to start turning things around sooner. SPAL will be ahead of them. SPAL are only 9 points off them. Maybe Napoli will get relegated. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? I think Naples will probably burn if that happened. To be fair, Gattuso would never be able to walk through the city again. Move on. Brescia Cagliari 2-2. Mario Balotelli sent off within 7 minutes of coming onto the pitch. But you know what? I think this is harsh, because all he does is do what players do every single week, every single game, multiple times over. He got booked. He told the referee to F off, and the referee, his ego took the better of him, and he decided to show Balotelli a red card. Kev, you nodded. You agree?
Yeah, no, I do. I think there's certain players, and Mario's one of those where maybe not that they purposely get treated differently, but I think there's a leniency that other players would be shown, and what he shouted, probably out of frustration in himself or where the game was going, is certainly something that I've uttered in my workplace more than once, and yeah, I think it's there's the famous "Why Always Me" T-shirt, and I think that's one of these occasions where the referee could have been not so harsh.
Yeah, I think that's really poor officiating. I think it's lazy. It's just really poor. He probably needs to be spoken to about that, but he won't be, because it's Italy and no one cares about anything. But Cagliari stopped the rot. They finally got a point again after, what was it, 4 straight defeats, vetoing. It's still not a great result, is it? Going away to relegation threatened Brescia, who are in the bottom 3, and only getting a point.
No, in some ways it was a bit fortuitous because they needed a penalty to get the equaliser, and that was after Sandro Tonali for Brescia was having a pretty decisive game. He provided 2 assists for 2 lovely goals from Ernesto Torregrossa, and in my opinion, they're the type of goals Mario Balotelli should be scoring. They were that good. But then Tonali ruined his performance by giving away the penalty, and João Pedro, got another brace, and he's at least continuing his impressive season for the Sardinians.
Yeah, he's been quite good. I quite like him as a player. He was speaking recently saying how much he loves Cagliari and he'd like to stay there forever. It's nice. It's a nice fit, but you can't help but think he could probably do a job at a bit of a higher level. So maybe Cagliari getting into Europe will be nice, just to see João Pedro do well. Kev, coming to you for the last one. Bologna looked like they were going to beat Hellas Verona until the best Italian striker popped up with 9 minutes left. Fabio Borini scored the equaliser. What a player!
Yeah, he's been stealing a living, but he still pops up with the odd goal. But the Borini, I suppose, if I compare him to a fellow Italian striker, it would be Gabbiadini, who seems to go to clubs, whether in Italy or abroad, start really well and then drift off into obscurity. And although the signing of him may well help Hellas Verona stay up, although they're not exactly fighting relegation currently, he'll barely be on our radar next season, I imagine.
Yeah, I feel for Borini, because when he came through, it was at Chelsea, wasn't it? And he was loaned out to Swansea and that. He looked like he was going to be a really, really talented goal scorer. And it didn't come to be. Then he ended up at Milan and he was playing at fullback for them last season. He just does anything. I quite like him. I think he gets a hard time. I know he's not a very good player, and that's probably why he gets a hard time, but leave him alone. Leave him alone, Kev. You're a bully.
I think maybe if he hadn't started as a striker.
Yeah. If he was like a workman-like winger, he'd be praised. Love Candreva, but...
Well, he's not got Candreva's quality. But also, maybe starting his career in England, because the English youngsters get hyped beyond belief because of the amount of media and everything surrounding the game there. And as soon as somebody comes through and does well, then the next big thing. And then, Roma took a chance on him. Then he ended up going, then going back to England with Liverpool. And it didn't quite work out for him there. And I think he has been a little bit unfortunate from the amount of hype that he got as a sort of a striker. He was expected to go to Liverpool and maybe probably go to Roma and be a 20-goal a season striker. And that's not what Fabio Borini is.
No, it's not. And who knows? Maybe he was never going to be that anyway. He's from Emilia-Romagna, Borini, and from the province of Bologna. I didn't know that. It's interesting. Anyway, no one cares. I don't really care all that much. Just didn't know it before. We've come to the end. Thanks, guys. Thanks, listeners. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Alistair. As always, head over to ForzaItalianFootball.com for match coverage, opinion pieces, news pieces, everything you want on Italian football, really. Kev, you've written an opinion piece. What's it about?
Christian Eriksen.
What did you say?
I said he'd be a fantastic signing. He clinched the title for Inter. No, I didn't quite go that far. But certainly could spark some life into this team and just get the deal done, as I said earlier.
Okay. Vito, are you writing anything?
Well, I've submitted my team of the week, so come and check that out. This time it's probably a more diverse selection of players, so have a look, see what you think, and yeah. Be good to get everyone's feedback on it.
Have you been making people angry with that? Because I remember when I used to do it, people used to lose their nut about the team of the week and not really understand the concept that there are only 11 players. So you'd name 3 strikers who all scored hat-tricks, and then they'd all go, oh, but this guy scored 2, and this guy scored 2, and this guy scored... And it's just, come on.
Well, I think last week, a couple people were questioning it. You know, you're going as far to say if it was satire or a joke.
Free Sampdoria players. Free Sampdoria players.
It was a top performance. Okay, we were bad this week, but last week we were on.
I'm looking at the team of the week now. It looks quite good, but it's reminded me. Can we briefly talk about Leonardo Spinazzola and how funny it was that he did not want to go to Inter? Did you see his face when he landed at, I think it was Malpensa, and he was trying to be interviewed, and he looked like someone had just told him his dog had died, and he wasn't speaking to anyone. He wasn't saying anything. He was barely grunting. And then there's a picture of him on the train going back to Rome, and he is smiling from ear to ear. He clearly didn't want to go to Inter, which is quite odd because he could go and challenge for the Scudetto. But no, that was something that I enjoyed very, very much. And the Politano Spinazzola thing is weird. That would have probably been good for everyone involved. It is what it is. Anyway.
Would have.
Goodbye.
Ciao,
See you later.